God with Adidas was messy. God with the MLB was beautiful. So why do some collabs flop and other ones hit the mark? And also, how is Joe Freshgoods able to navigate all of this seamlessly? We'll talk about all that and more on today's video. But before we get into that, I'm Derek, the marketing point guard, and welcome to my channel. Please like and subscribe. Trying to get the page up to 700 subscribers as quickly as possible. So I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and let's get into today's topic. So before we get into the bad, let's give the flowers where they are due. God last week rolled out their MLB collaboration, and it was done so well in a way that is very true and authentic to God's ethos and aesthetics. Partnering with Calmatic to shoot the Picture Day campaign, Calmatic, who just recently did some of Kendrick Lamar's videos, he's done the House Party remakes, he's establishing himself as a marquee go-to director in the industry. And so that collaboration, that connection makes a lot of sense. God, Jerry Lorenzo, they're always going to give us beautiful aesthetics and very clean storytelling. And their commitment to, American luxury and creating the new American luxury label with Fear of God makes sense in alignment with MLB. They have been America's pastime. They're a staple in American culture. Even though the popularity of baseball is waning a little bit, it still holds this cultural cachet that aligns with MLB. And it's personal for Jerry Lorenzo. His dad played in the MLB and he coached and was a manager as well. So he grew up around the game. And I'm sure for him, it's a full circle moment to be able to collaborate in this kind of expansive way, not just across, headwear, which they've done before, but now a full apparel collection with a couple of teams. Like, that is amazing. And so it just feels very connected. It feels very authentic. It feels so much aligned with where their brand wants to go and what their brand represents. You got an American staple of baseball, new American luxury. You see where the gaps are on both sides. Baseball needs to get younger, hipper, cool. Fear of God is still trying to establish themselves in this luxury space and kind of be a staple in that. Makes a lot of sense. So that's why that collaboration comes across so well. Extra points for tapping Lauren London to model for the Seattle Mariners. Again, she's not from Seattle. It on the paper it looks like a little bit off, but if you know why she's repping the Seattle Mariners in that ad. And again, just beautiful. It's a beautiful conversation that they're crafting through this collaboration that connects back to what started MLB All-Star Weekend in Atlanta. Jerry Lorenzo put together an Atlanta-specific Essentials collab. That one tapped into the Falcons as well and some other Atlanta marks. But in general, they were able to tell an Atlanta Essentials story around All-Star Weekend for MLB. That plants the seeds for this larger collaboration, and it all makes sense. So this is what we're used to seeing from Jerry in his approach, right? Like, in the past, I've praised Salehi for his ability to have a strong point of view, right? And whether he's working with New Balance, Puma, Versace, you kind of see his design language. It's very distinctive, very unique. So Jerry Lorenzo is very much of that same school of thought, right? He has a very clean, minimalistic viewpoint in how he is trying to communicate luxury. And with that, you have to be very selective about your partners because there's times where it doesn't match. And I think the MLB allows for that. I think sports in general allow for people who are coming in with the luxury mindset to elevate, because sports can be kind of gimmicky. It can be sort of characterized and seem a little childish, for lack of a better term. So when you come in with a luxury viewpoint, you're able to elevate. I think Kith does this very well with a lot of collaborations you see them do with the Knicks and all the New York teams and Aimé Leon Dore and what they do with the hats. So there is this very, very tangible relationship between luxury and sports and how those come together to elevate each other. And which makes it all the more surprising why Adidas and Fear of God did not have that same effect. Now, to understand where that collaboration went wrong, we really got to look at its origins. And again, on paper, it all looks right. Jerry Lorenzo is coming off hot off of his Nike Fear of God collaboration. Adidas is very much in the disruptor lane. Kanye's over there with Yeezy. They're building a crazy amount of energy, right? And Jerry kind of comes in, and from his perspective, coming in to kind of build his own lane. Like, he already had the Fear of God luxury label. He had his Essentials, which is sort of like not a takedown, but a more affordable version of that. And then the third piece would be Fear of God Athletics. 3 verticals, 3 stripes. Seems like a great fit. But I think what started to happen at Adidas was there wasn't a clear direction. There was reports of him being head of Adidas basketball, and then he wasn't, and being involved with the Anthony Edwards signature process, and he wasn't. So there was already from the beginning this just sort of lack of clarity on what his purpose would be. And I think it would be ignorant to ignore the very big problem that was facing Adidas at this time, which was Yeezy. He was able to go over there and create this massive movement, this massive expansion of their brand. He becomes a billionaire, and then doing the thing Yeezy does, that all kind of falls apart. And so where does that leave Jerry Lorenzo? He goes from being in his very specific viewpoint and mission to now being charged with a larger role. And, they rely on him to now fill the gap that Yeezy left. And that's not his bag. Even though they've collaborated in the past and were friends at one point, I'm not sure where they stand now. That isn't who him and Yeezy are not the same kind of designers and creators. And so to expect him to step into that Yeezy role just further exposes the misalignment that was happening in that relationship. So now Adidas comes into this partnership expecting the hype that Kanye brings, expecting the vibrance that Kanye brings, and this grand storytelling and takeover. And that is just not what Fear of God is going to do. So he's looking to use premium materials, crafting his shoes in Italy, and sourcing and all these things that take time. So he already comes over, and it takes a while for us before we see any product, before we even get an Essentials Adidas hoodie. It takes a little while for that to come to place. And the hype game is what have you done for me lately? As great as the the Nike Fear of God basketball campaign was, it had been 2 or 3 years before we get any Adidas product. And so now the hype is already way too high, right? And so when he delivers a product that is very much in his same design language, very much connected to his previous designs, which as a designer you should absolutely do, it doesn't fit what the expectation is of being with Adidas. So now you have a mismatch and what people would call a flop or a failure of a launch. And if you look at the two shoes, yes, you can see that the same person made both of them, which is what you wanted as a designer again. But it just kind of falls flat because now you're speaking to a design that came out 2019 and now trying to have that same feeling in 2024, 23, when everybody is constantly giving us fresh design, new ideas. I mean, look at the signature landscape and how much has changed from when he left Nike. I mean, at that time, I think he was poised to be a disruptor because his approach and his luxurious style elevation of basketball sneakers stood out. But we had kind of gone through that cycle in the 4 years and wanted something new where we're getting fresh designs from AE1s and we're getting the Jaws and we're getting the Halliburtons and we're getting all these like fresh takes now. And so it's less of a void. So how are you speaking in that space? And ironically enough, I think his best approach and best foot forward in that is the Fear of God 2.5s. And they're super clean, right? Like, so I think he's, again, speaking to a more elevated, luxury conscious consumer, honestly, myself. But basketball shoes got to pop up in AU tournaments, and they got to be on the EYBL and the Adidas 3SSB circuits. They got to be in these conversations with the youth, and his approach isn't really appealing to them. And, it's appealing to me, and I, as much as I still try to play, like I don't need 30 pairs of basketball sneakers anymore. So, it's they're kind of at an impasse, and I think it's just the partnership no longer makes sense. So it just shows how collaborations have to be intentional, and collaborations at this scale have to make sense long term, right? And there's no way you can go into these things and properly forecast what is going to happen over here that'll affect you. Honestly, Jerry Lorenzo's story in Adidas reminds me a lot of another one of my favorite rappers who kind of got stuck in this same predicament, Lupe Fiasco. He was signed to Atlantic Records, and I still remember to this day, he had a very intentional plan for his albums. He had Food and Liquor, he had The Cool, and he wanted to do LUP End. Shout out, leave a comment if you remember LUP End. Like that was, I was on the blogs looking for that. It was Everywhere, Nowhere, and Down Here, something like that. But he had this whole plan of being like very artistic, very creative to tell his story and kind of drop his last albums the way he wanted to. But then, T.I. goes to jail. I think Gucci or somebody else goes to jail around that time. And he goes from being like, fun artist on the rise to being like, hey, you are that guy now. We need you to deliver the commercially successful album and give us the big scope that we need to, keep the lights on in the building. So then we get Lasers, which I'm sure Lupe isn't the most fond of, and he has some of his biggest songs on there, and it's his most commercially successful, but he felt like there's some artistic compromises he had to make to do that, to appeal to a larger ecosystem. And I look at those two situations and it's the same. It's like you came in with one expectation, your circumstances change, and now you're expected to deliver something else. And when that happens, is it Fear of God's fault that it's not a successful partnership? Is it Adidas? I think you just kind of wash your hands of it and kind of move forward. But that's why it is very intentional about partnerships, because you can pick the right one that elevates you, but the wrong one could kind of set you back, or just teach you some valuable lessons, and hopefully your brand is strong enough to ride those out. And I think Fear of God is not going anywhere. Essentials isn't going anywhere. Jerry is a force in this industry. So I'm excited to see their next moves and how they kind of connect with the right partners to continue to elevate their message. And if it's more like the MLB, then they're going to be all right. I'm not too worried about them. And on the flip side, we have Joe Freshgoods, man. He is somebody who has mastered collaborations. Even if you go back to when he first started, screen print tees in Chicago. I think he has stories of like when Obama was elected, making shirts up real fast and turnkey and just flooding the streets with those, right? So he's created the brand awareness, and now he's just been able to elevate his storytelling and elevate his process through the right partners. And obviously the tentpole of all of that is New Balance. I covered that in the Dime a Day, kind of break that down. You guys should go check that one out, where I talk about how outside clothes was pivotal, that campaign, in changing just the level of authenticity that people bring to these campaigns, to these stories, and just the delivery of it. We got a sort of cinematic TV short that goes along with these things, and we get the community events, and I think Ama Manier's kind of followed a lot of that template and done a lot of similar kind of activations around telling these very specific stories to the Black community, and for Joe Freshgoods, the Black community in Chicago, and how he grew up, and there's nobody else's but his, and he tells them masterfully. And so he's been able to pinpoint the right partnerships. And I think when you have such a strong voice, you use that as the filter of what makes sense and what doesn't, right? Like if you're just trying to grow and your only things, I want to grow, you're going to take on any and everything. But you should pause and make sure that you're taking on the right things, because the wrong partnership could crush you and the right partnership will elevate you. But you don't know that because you aren't sure on your voice and you aren't solid in what you and how you want to communicate. And so if you want to see a shining example of that, Joe Freshgoods gets it done. He gets it done, you know. And even the last couple of weeks, just masterful executions for Trill Burger. You know, Bun B has been able to create a strong brand of burgers. Like, I love seeing how where hip hop is taking it. You know, like, who would have thought that UGK, you know, chopped and screw rappers from Houston would, one, have this longevity in hip hop and as rappers and as cultural figures, but then kind of dive into the restaurant burger game and have, I think he won a contest on the Today Show or something like that, voted one of the best burgers in the country, you know. So to have Bun B behind that, and for him to tap in with Joe Freshgoods in Chicago, they put together some merch, they put together some packaging around the product, and was able to bring Trill Burgers to Chicago. So that's Joe Freshgoods bringing something to his community, right? And I just know, for people in Chicago, seeing what Bun B has built with Trill Burgers is inspiring to them. So it's, again, community first focus, intentional storytelling, great products. You got that. And then the Clipse thing, I feel like he was like, y'all mind if I flex real quick? Because that's what the Clipse partnership was. It sounds like, from the messages and kind of reading through the tea leaves, it seems like that kind of came together pretty last minute. And what he was still able to produce was completely fire. Like, I'll show the process of how he made the Mike Tyson shirts. Like, come on now, that's fire. Mike Tyson, blow to the face. Again, if I gotta spell it out for you, you just ain't gonna get it. But, you know, him doing that, the church fans, right? Like, let God sort them out. So, like, obviously this album in Malice's history allows for these religious undertones. You know, we get it in the music. So for him to bring out the classic church fan, you know, if you didn't grow up in a black church, like, this is a staple, a thing that, you know, everybody can connect with, that is familiar with that story, but it's universal enough that outside of it, you could still get what it is. So just like pulling that in, genius. And then furthering that and using the lyrics as inspiration, we get a home good piece with the ballerina doing pirouettes in the snow globe. You know, like, it seems so simple, right? Like, that is like a duh, but those are the best ideas, man. Those are the best ones where it's like, I should have thought of that. And it seems simple, it seems easy, but it takes a very intentional approach and a very clear understanding of who you are and what you want to say to be able to create those, everybody should have got this moments, right? Like, those are the best ones, right? And Joe Freshgoods has been able to pull that off time and time and time again. So if it was easy, everybody would do it. So I look at him as a shining example of knowing your voice, knowing who to collaborate and when, and then when you get that collaboration, not going into their world, bringing them into yours and telling those stories. So he's a great inspiration on that. And if you're looking to understand partnerships, that's a great place to start. And again, like, I'm not here to like piss on Fear of God completely. I'm a huge fan. I own a lot of their essential stuff and shoes and things like that. Like, I am a big fan of the product, right? So I'm just kind of showing how it could go good and bad, right? And really helping you see the ways in which they kind of fell short with Adidas, but they're not done, because the MLB partnership is just another way to show, like, that they're still tapped in and they can do what they can do. So yeah, that's most of what I want to talk about today. Collabs and how to frame yours. If you made it this far, you know I'm gonna ask. You gotta give me a like. Gotta drop a comment. Let me know what your favorite Fear of God product is. If you rock with the brand. If not, again, let's have a dialogue in the comments. And shout out to Clipse, man. I just can't let this video wrap. I know we mentioned them when it came to the Joe Freshgoods collab earlier, but man, they're just doing some amazing things. Talk about collaborations and partnerships. Like, them performing at the Vatican is like kind of insane when you really think about it. You got two rappers from Virginia who were drug dealers, right? One leaves the game, leaves the rap game, goes full into like ministry and just being the steward of his faith. For 16 years, they come back together, drop a classic album with Pharrell that they record at the Louis Vuitton studio headquarters in Paris, right? Two Virginia kids record an album at Louis Vuitton headquarters in Paris, and then become the first rappers to perform at the Vatican. Like, come on. Like, who would have ever thought that hip hop could take it this far? Like, that is insane. And you know, it's just a testament to just starting and keep going, because you never know how far this thing could go if you never start, right? So that's just, I'm gonna leave y'all with that one, because that just really inspired me over the weekend, and sharing it with you to hopefully do the same. But yeah, that's all I got for this video, man. I appreciate y'all for tapping in, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.